I figured the best way to show you how you might use this scale project is to show you how I used it. So this then is the first part of a video presentation, or the hand-drawn part of it, producing and scaling a painted mural. When I went through the slideshow a couple of weeks back showing you the interior of my house, I showed you this image. It is of our old living room. I think that I mentioned that we had discussion salons. Well, pre-pandemic. Consider us on hold at present. This is a corner of our living room showing the north wall of that space. We all sat about on futons on the floor, and there were storage cabinets along the walls about 2 feet high where we stashed extra bedding in case anyone stayed over. Folks just camped out on the futons. What I want to talk about is the mural on the wall there to the left center. That is what this presentation is about. It's based on this. Wikipedia describes it as follows. The Flammarion engraving is a wood engraving by an unknown artist, so named because it was first documented appearance in Camille Flammarion's 1888 book translated from the French, The Atmosphere, Popular Meteorology. The wood engraving has often but erroneously been referred to as a woodcut. It has been used as a metaphorical illustration of either the scientific or the mystical quest for knowledge. The print depicts a man clothed in a long robe and carrying a staff, who is at the edge of the earth where it meets the sky. He kneels down and passes his head and shoulders and right arm through the star-studded sky, discovering a marvelous realm of circling clouds, fires and suns beyond the heavens. One of the elements of the cosmic machinery bears a strong resemblance to the traditional pictorial representation of the wheel in the middle of a wheel, described in the visions of the Hebrew prophet Ezekiel. The caption that accompanies the engraving in Flammarion's book reads, "A missionary of the Middle Ages tells that he had found the point where the sky and the earth touch." Well, we decided that we needed to have a version of this on our living room, and I set about to paint a version of it on our wall. But first I needed to figure out how to scale it so to go about reproducing a faithful version of it. That meant doing a floor plan of the room so that I had dimensions. Now first I created this rough diagram, along with a rough elevation of where the mural was going to live. Now please pay attention to how grossly disproportionate these diagrams are compared to the final elevation, and you'll notice how important it is to do accurate scale drawings for something like this. So I got out the diagram, and with my measuring tape put in some quick dimensions, which I then had to translate from feet and inches into purely inches, shown here in green, in order to convert all of that back into feet below. That gave me the whole distance of the room from the front, west wall, to the back, east wall. This would be important for creating the true elevation drawing of the north wall as it was its width. But first I had to take some quick dimensions of the width of the space between the windows and the overall wall, minus the dimension of the storage cabinets that I had built below the windows. This would be where the mural was going to be placed. I now had all of the dimensions necessary to create a layout in scale of the mural. First, I produced the scale elevation of the north wall of the living room. Here is where I want you to take note of how drastically different the rough drawing is from this finished scale drawing. And this is where you could make mistakes unless you did some drawings like this in order to reproduce something. Now, because I had to take into consideration the storage cabinets along the bottom of the wall, that meant the mural was going to have to go above them, which only left about 6 feet. So, no matter how big we wanted to make the mural, it could only ever be this high, like this. The sides would have some blank spaces left and right, and the width of the mural would simply be a dimension that would come from the overall height. When we say that a dimension comes, it means that it's because one dimension is fixed, the other one simply follows suit. This quick dimension describes how that would be. Now comes the part where Photoshop plays a role in this dimensioning process. because I know that the overall height of the wall is 8 feet, I can use that to determine how to dimension my elevation to fit the space. Here is a video that describes that process. So what I did at this point was to take the drawing itself of the wall and made a copy of it. So you can see me going around here in Photoshop and do Edit and copy that. I'm going to go to File and New. And I'm going to make sure that my inches is set exactly to 8 by 8 inches. That way I know when I bring it in, and I'm going to go Edit and Paste. See, the drawing's going to come in a little bit smaller than the 8 by 8, but what I can do at this point is I can take and drag it to the upper corner. I'm going to zoom out here a little bit so we can see what I'm doing. I'm going to drag that drawing up to the upper corner so that the corner of the ceiling and the corner of the wall where the mural ends is going to be exactly in the corner of the 8 by 8. And then I'm going to do Edit, Transform, and Scale that and drag it down until the floor touches the floor of the space. So there's the 8 by 8. Make sure that gets tucked back up into the corner again. And if my floor is touching the floor and the ceiling is touching the ceiling, then I'm good. All right, so this drawing now should be dimensional to the size of an 8 by 8, 8 by 8 inches. So then what I can do is I can go in here and set my view to a new guide layout, and it was already set to an 8 by 8, but I want it to be 8 by 8 and not 8 by 7. Okay, so what this has done now for me is it has shown me exactly each one of these squares now represents 8 feet. So I can see that my mural is going to be 8 feet wide, and I know that the height of the room is 8 feet. But the bottom part of it, if you remember correctly, had this portion where I had built in some cabinets down below. So you can see that the mural itself can't be any longer than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and some inches. So this is laid out dimensionally now to 5, probably close to 6 feet, but it can't be any more than that in order for it to fit in above those cabinets. And that's the way you get this. So what I'll do now is I will bring in my snippet tool. Close that down. Bring up my snippet tool here. And you can see it here. I can go to Mode and go Rectangular Snip. And I'm going to go around this so that I can capture this and put it into my slideshow and explain what I'm doing from here on out. So anyway, back at you here in a minute in the main video. Now, with these guidelines superimposed over the grid, it makes placing it onto the dimensional elevation very easy. It also makes it easy, well, somewhat easy, to translate this drawing to the wall. If I take something and apply this same grid work to the wall, with each blue line representing 1 foot square, then I can plot points to determine where everything goes, more or less like doing a connect the dots kind of a drawing. For instance, the sun is 3 squares up from the bottom at the immediate right-hand side of the mural, and it fits pretty much inside that 3rd square up. This way, you can produce a pretty accurate tracing of your artwork. It takes some time, but you can do it. Now, for the next part of what Photoshop can do, if you remember my demo on lifting line work, you will be able to understand how I changed the black and white line work into this. This is a version of the mural's line art in sepia colors, which is what we wanted to have on the wall, and not a white background either, but a black background. Now, there were other colors already being used in the room. The room had a lot of references to a batik fabric that we had used to cover a lot of the upholstery in, and we applied this as painted colors to the wall elsewhere in the room. We wanted those colors reflected as paint colors in the mural. like a coloring book behind the line work. Here is a part of the sky and the ground. The man's robe, the foliage, and the glow of the sun. The detail of the sun itself, more of the plants, the buildings, and some additional foliage. The stars, the moon, and the highlights on the plants and the trees. And when it would be completed, this would be what it would look like. All of this was done before any paint was applied to the wall. In scale, on the overall dimensional elevation, it would look like this. And this is how it turned out. This is a shot taken from the left. And this one is taken from the right. The globe in the upper right-hand corner is a lamp. Now, unfortunately, this is going to get all covered up here this summer. We'll no longer be using this room as a salon room, or if we do, it'll be a much more limited kind of space. My girlfriend has resurrected her law license and now needs an office and a library. Converting this room into a library means that bookcases will be covering up this mural and this wall. But we got a good 10 years out of it. Oh well, as the French say, telle la vie.